Welcome everyone to the third of our Leading Social Change Speakers series. You guys are in for a huge treat. Today we have David J., who is the head of mobilization for the Center for Humane Technology, which has really been at the forefront of this entire movement and really calling for change, putting pressure on the tech companies and on government and mobilizing communities and getting teachers and students and everyone involved to drive this movement. And you guys are very much a part of it. And David is the core of that as their head of mobilization. So he's going to talk to you. He's going to, true to fashion of our other speakers, David's going to share his professional journey with you all, because I think it's great for you to hear his path to where he is, and how he got to be where in his position. So that'll be excellent. But first, before I do that, I do want to give him a chance to meet you all. So we're going to popcorn this one around. So guys, be ready to just pick somebody else. Just give them your name, how you're affiliated with LookUp, and then where you are physically, like where you're physically sitting, and then popcorn it to somebody else, if you don't mind. We'll start with Kikoa. We'll start with you.
Hello, David. Hello, everyone. So my name is Kikoa. As Julie said, I am a LookUp social innovator on the Eventually team, and I am physically located Notre Dame, Indiana right now. And Julie, do you want me to pick someone else, or
yeah,
you can
just pick anybody? Go for it.
Mira, you want to go?
Yep, for sure. Hi, I'm Mira. I'm on the crowd surf team with LookUp, and I'm currently sitting in Boulder, Colorado. And I will popcorn it to Rebecca.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm the digital marketing intern at LookUp, and I am currently in Orange County, California. I will popcorn to Alexa.
Hi, I'm Alexa, and I'm the LookUp Team Leadership Council Chair, and I am coming to you from Palo Alto, California. But I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm also in class, but I really wanted to be here, so I'm on two computers at the moment. And I'll popcorn to Kaio.
Hi, I'm Kaio. I'm on the Team Leadership Council too, and I live in Brazil. Go, Chloe.
Chloe, was that who? I think you said Chloe.
Okay.
There you
Hi,
go.
I'm Chloe. I'm on the Assemble team as a LookUp innovator, and I am located in Lake Tahoe, California right now. And I'll popcorn to Alma.
Hi everyone, I'm Alma. I am also on Team Assemble, a LookUp innovator.
Excuse me.
I am currently located in the Virgin Islands, so I have this beautiful view while I'm looking at all of you. So yeah, I will popcorn to Grant.
Hey everyone, sorry my camera is not working on my computer. It's been a hassle, but we're adjusting. My name is Grant. I use he, him pronouns. I'm also on Team Assemble. I'm currently located in San Francisco. I'll pass to James.
Hey, I'm James. I'm also on Team Assemble, and I'm also in San Francisco. So yeah, I will pass it to Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm on Team Honor Terms as a LookUp social innovator. I'll pass to Madison.
Hi, I'm Madison. I'm a social innovator from Team Legislate, and I'm currently located in Rhode Island. And I'll pass it to Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm also a social innovator from Rhode Island on Team Legislate. I'm also in class right now, but I'm really excited to hear this talk. So I will be virtually dissecting a kidney while listening to the talk. And has Madeline gone yet?
Have not. Hi, I'm Madeline. I also go by Maddie, but I know there's another Maddie here. I'm also a social innovator. I am the No Social Media November Challenge creator, I guess, and I am in Littleton, Colorado. Let's see. I think most people have gone. Ruby, I don't know if you've gone. I'll pass it to you.
I haven't. Hello everyone, my name is Ruby and I'm on the Eventually team, and currently I'm in South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame, and I will popcorn Jean.
Who'd you say?
Hey everyone.
Oh, Jean. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's Jean actually, French name. So I'm Jean-Désiré Coty from the Ivory Coast, West Africa. I'm a digital marketing consultant, working with Oluwatosin from Nigeria on some projects that we can implement in Africa.
Thanks, Sean. Can you want to pick some? Well, maybe I can.
Andrea.
Andrea hasn't gone. Yeah.
Andrea, yeah.
Okay. There you go.
So I'm Andrea. I'm 17 years old from Italy. I'm in the LookUp Team Leadership Council, and I'm not sure who's next.
It might be
Sam.
Sam, are you there? Sam, Caitlin.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm in the Leadership Lab, and I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee.
Excellent. And
I don't know who's next.
I think Maddie McAuliffe, if you're there, Maddie.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, my Wi-Fi's been really spotty, so I'm just going to be audio for today, but I'm the founder of Mine, part of the Leadership Lab, and I'm in Los Angeles, California. And then is there...
It's Sophie or Caitlin. So let's go with Sophie.
Hello, my name is Sophie, also spotty Wi-Fi. I'm a professor at Chapman University. I just saw Rebecca there. Hi, Rebecca. And I am located in Orange, California.
And Chapman was one of our partners on the startup competition. And Caitlin, I know you're on your phone. She was calling in. I can unmute you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Caitlin.
I'm Caitlin. I'm on the Unpluggers team, and I'm in Orange County, California. And then I'm at work right now, so just using my audio today.
Excellent. Okay. Awesome. Well, I'm thrilled to turn this over to David, who is offered to talk to you all about mobilizing for change and healthier, ethical, more humane tech world. And he has so much to say, so I'm not going to take it any more time from him. But David, I'm going to turn this over to you. You talk as long as you want. We have about an hour for this, and then, well, an hour total. So the more Q&A time, roundtable. I know you love talking to these guys. Well, I mean, David really values your perspective, guys. So I think he wants to get, and we owe it to him to be there for him and share with him your thoughts as much as he's here to teach you, because we're all learning on this one. So David, I'll turn it over to you, if that's okay.
Perfect. And yeah, very excited to kind of share, as you said, a little of my personal and professional background, and then also get into why I'm so excited to be talking to you all, like why I think the kind of work that LookUp is doing and work that is youth-led has a really, really important role to play right now in the way that tech is transforming. And so I'd love to sort of build the context about why I believe that, and then open to a discussion with you all. So as I said, David J, I use he, him pronouns. I'm calling in from Oakland, California. I have been kind of at the intersection of tech and relational organizing for my whole life. When I was 18, I helped to start the student peace movement against the war in Afghanistan. I was a freshman in college when when the attacks happened in 2001, and we were sort of scrambling to figure out how we could push back against the war that didn't make any sense. And I also helped to build one of the first really large communities for people like me who identify as asexual. I had struggled for my whole life to understand what it meant to be ace in a world that sort of equated sexuality and intimacy. I never talked to another person like me, and so I just put up a website to try to find other people like me, and it became the central gathering place for ace identified people online, and has been for the past 20 years. And I got to see how, when I created a place for people to come together and share stories that they didn't have another place to share, and we put the work into moderating that place, into holding space, into keeping conversations that allowed people to be vulnerable, like that was really powerful. That was transformative, not just for the people involved, but for the society around us. And I got really, I became a really big believer in the work of building social movements, and also realized that it's really hard to get paid to do that, especially to get paid to do the version of it that I liked, which was about, getting people into relationship with one another, not necessarily like getting them to give money or getting them to sign a petition or something. And I looked around, there weren't great ways to get, there is not a lot of money available for people to do queer organizing explicitly, and I didn't want to take that money from the people doing trans work. So I decided I would teach myself to program. I first got a job as a product manager in a nonprofit. Then I went to business school and got a degree in sustainability and social enterprise, and came out and really just taught myself to code because I saw all of these ways that all these opportunities for deep connection that the big platforms just didn't seem to be interested in. They were interested in grabbing our attention. They were interested in selling us advertisements. They weren't interested in helping people go deep with one another in the way that I saw as really powerful. And so I started doing work that focused on that. I would kind of start working on something that felt really alive and passionate and powerful for me, that felt like it was missing from the world. And usually I wouldn't be able to get paid to do that thing, but someone would notice and would see that I was doing something they thought was really cool, and then they'd hire me. So I kept sort of starting companies. I got hired into Samsung's innovation lab and helped to build out their innovation work. I got hired into a team that was working with Mozilla and the New York Times building open source commenting systems so that we could have better discussion around public news sites. I got hired into work on political campaigns to try to integrate relational organizing into the way that that we manage volunteers in political campaigns in the 2018 midterm race. So I kept sort of, I had a career path where I had this very marketable skill that was product development, and I had a really interesting and unique thing that I was doing with it. And I just got really good at finding the people who saw the value in that intersection. And when they saw the value in that intersection, there was, that made me a really, really valuable person for them to bring onto their teams. And that continued until 2019, when I started advising the Center for Humane Technology. And the Center for Humane Technology started with the work of this guy named Tristan Harris, who you all may know from The Social Dilemma. And he was really getting up and saying, hey, there is a deeper problem with social media. It's not just that it's addictive. It's not just that it is kind of sucking up too much of our time and creating problems with our mental health. There are ways that it is fundamentally undermining some of the things that make our society work by removing our ability to create a sense of shared understanding, by amplifying whatever version of truth generates the most engagement. And often that's a version of reality that is really disconnected from what we're seeing in the world. And also it creates multiple versions of reality that are really disconnected from one another. And it rewards people when they fight between those versions of reality. It doesn't reward them when they get to common ground. All of these are sort of emergent properties of what happens when you extract human attention. And he was getting up and saying this, and then a lot of people were coming to him and saying like, hey, that really resonates with me. What do I do about it? And he just didn't have an answer to that question. He didn't know how to engage with all the people who were getting activated around this story. And so they brought me in to kind of answer that question and say, how do we take all the people who are being activated and build a movement capable of changing the way that technology is built? And over the past several years, I've been building different versions of that community, building spaces where people can come together and build relationship in order to make that change happen. Those people are technologists, tech workers, they're students, they're senior people inside of places like Facebook and TikTok and YouTube that really want to see these problems change and don't know how. There are regulators who want to move in from the outside and change this. There's people There are people who are really shifting the ecosystem. And what we've seen over the past year is that we went from a world where the tech platforms, like, they knew that something was wrong, but they were really trying their best to avoid it. They sort of had this line that, hey, we're neutral platforms for free speech. We just want to create a way for people to come together, and we'll kind of take the worst stuff out of that conversation. But for the most part, our job is just to, like, provide a place for people to gather and make boatloads of money. And they are, and there's now, I think, switched to this defensive place where they say, oh, I think that the public spaces we've created, we have to be responsible for. And we don't know how to do that. And when we fail to be responsible for them, terrible things happen. And we don't know how to stop those terrible things from happening. So there, and everyone from the general public to, to regulators, is to their own employees, are kind of pushing on them to try to take some of the costs that they've externalized, some of the harms they've created, and bring them inside. And so as that happens, these tech companies that they used to sort of dominate everything, they're starting to retreat. They're starting to have to focus on just addressing the harms that they've built, which means that there's room suddenly for new things to emerge. And we're seeing, for the first time, real competitors come up in the social media landscape. And they're not competitors I'm most excited about. They're folks like TikTok, they're folks like Clubhouse. They have a lot of the same problems that we've had before, because the people building them look a lot like the people who built the last generation of platforms. People funding them look a lot like the people who funded the last generation of platforms. A lot of the same assumptions are baked in. But there's this moment of opportunity to say, what if we built software with a different set of assumptions about how it wanted to show up in people's lives, about about what scale feels appropriate, about what kind of financing mechanisms make this possible? What if we explored a different set of assumptions? Could we create something that is valuable in a fundamentally different way and potentially more powerful way? And that's where I see part of why I see engaging with folks like you as so critical, is that when we think about what's the movement look like that is capable of really challenging big tech in the way that tobacco was challenged historically. It's a movement that's probably a movement where young people play a central role, or even a leading role, the way that that folks have in Sunrise. What's a movement look like that? What's a movement look like that can reshape the relationship that our society has with technology, that can have widespread cultural change? So that's probably also a movement where folks like you play a really, really central role. What's a movement look like that can change how technology is built and build a new generation of technology that's built around a different set of assumptions? Same thing. So the technology we have right now a lot of it was started on college campuses. A lot of it was built by young people. And now it's and it was built in an idealistic environment. Now it's grown, and we've learned a lot about why the assumptions that technology was built around were wrong. And so now, with that knowledge, we need to start in a fundamentally new way. We need a new paradigm. At CHT, we have some thoughts about what that paradigm might look like. We put together a course on humane technology that's helping people come together and talk about that paradigm. But we need kind of folks like you to be on the ground doing the messy work of actually building, testing, and exploring and advocating. I don't want to center building technology, because I think the work of cultural change, the work of help people have new relationships with technology, and the work of bringing people together on advocacy is as important to shift the system of power as writing code. So we'll pause there and open up for questions, but that's kind of where I'm coming from and why I'm excited to speak with you all.
David, I'm just going to jump in for a quick sec. I'm going to remove the spotlight, but one of the things that I was, you mentioned it, and I think it's an important part, is that there's the corporate, or there's the business side of it, and business digital responsibility or business ethics. You've got government's role in this, and then you have society's role or the public's role. And I'd love you to talk a little bit about that challenge, because many of these young people in particular are facing it when it's like an alcoholic. You don't want to admit they have a problem. So you're trying to change people's behavior and get their friends to recognize that they're being taken advantage of. Or I've talked to people who have said, oh, I don't want to watch The Social Dilemma because I just don't want to know. I don't want to know, you know, then I have to make a conscious decision about whether I'm going to continue down this path knowing or not. It's almost better to not know. So can you talk a little bit about that struggle, particularly in advocacy, when it's like, how much education versus how much, you know, policy push do you, I mean, talk a little bit about that struggle and helping to mobilize a community that doesn't realize that they're necessarily being taken advantage of. It's like smoking. It's like they didn't know they were putting addictive products in the cigarettes, so they just thought they enjoyed smoking. Could you talk a little bit about that? And then
yeah, so I'm a big student of social movement history, and something I've seen that's come up again and again and again in movements that really transform our society is that they often start with something like a support group. If you look at the role of conscious raising groups in feminism, if you look at the role of churches in civil rights, if you look at the where people came together to support one another in a kind of early stages of the queer liberation movement, like a lot of times it doesn't start with people saying, hey, there's a law we want to change and we're going to go change it. It starts with people coming together and saying, look, there's a thing I'm struggling with and I don't have a place to talk about it. And when you come together and have a place to talk about a thing, kind of like I was saying in my early days in the ACE community, when you have a place to come together and talk about a struggle that you don't have another place to talk about, that becomes really, really powerful. And those places not only can be transformational in our lives, they're where people build trust. And once they've built trust, once people have built trust, once you have that network of people who all see the same problem and they have all struggled with it and they're all really, really motivated to change it, that's where action happens that can drive systemic change. And if you can build those little networks of people who trust one another, who all share a vision of systemic change all over the world, that's what really changes things. So I say that to kind of break down this division between, you know, society, regulation, and tech companies. I think what happens is individuals who are struggling come together at first because they're struggling. And they have to realize that it's not their fault. It's not like our willpower should overcome these technologies. These technologies have massive asymmetric power over human willpower. But if we come together and can support one another, then we have more of a chance. And those systems of support are the same systems that result in radically new technology happening. They're the same systems that result in people inside of a tech company coming together and saying like, hey, we do product development this one way, but maybe we really should be doing it differently. They're the same systems that, in our experience, lead legislators to want to address this issue and craft reform. They're the same things that lead groups of citizens to come together and advocate so that that regulation can actually go through. So I see those things as connected and not intentional.
Okay, and just one more question, then I'm going to turn it over to the group. When you launched the asexuality website almost 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
You were brave, very, very brave to put yourself out there and to call for others to come talk. Let's figure and to find a community. And I refer often to, Susan and I refer often to this, you know, Gen Z, and particularly those stepping forward now to say, hey, you know, I don't agree with the way the digital world is right now, and we want change. And I consider them very brave in that they're being pioneers among their peers in this space and being willing to stick their neck out there and post something on their own Instagram account about tech life balance and all that. Do you have any words of wisdom to those who need to be brave right now, and what they need to keep in the back of their head when they're not feeling so brave?
I used to go around to college campuses all the time to talk about, you know, in pre-COVID times to talk about AIDS identity talk about asexual identity. And what would happen is there would be usually like one person who was the person who brought me there, and they were the only person they knew who felt this way on campus. And then we'd have this event where we'd get up and we talk about it. And it was super scary. Like, I was the one getting up and talking, but it was super scary for them to be like the visible person who was making this event happen, right? And because we had that event, all these other people would come out of the woodwork. They'd come out of the woodwork. They hadn't known that one another existed, but because someone was standing up, suddenly they could find one another. And the key was, and you didn't even know who they were in the audience, but after the event, there'd be like questions and answers with the speaker. And then I would always say, you know, if anyone wants to hang out, I'm just going to go to the student center and like get a bite to eat if anyone wants to come. And like all the people who were desperate to find someone who shared their experience would wind up at that table in the student center. And they would stay there for 3 hours and they would form a student group. And so, and that story is to say, like you were never as alone as you think you are. There are people who are waiting for you to give them the permission to come forward. And if you're ready to receive those people when they do, then that's what allows powerful things to happen.
Oh my God, I have the chills now. So I'm going to turn it over to our amazing young innovators.
Alexa, oh, go ahead.
Oh, you're muted, I think. Susan, you're muted.
Sorry, can you hear? Did you hear Susan?
No, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you hear Susan's question?
No.
Oh, I wanted Alexa.
Okay. So Alexa, Alexa asked a question in the chat. If she could just go ahead and ask that, if she's not in the middle of trying to answer a school question too.
Yeah, sure. No, I think I'm good. Well, first, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. First, I just wanted to start off by saying I'm currently in a unit in my history class. We're learning about the gay rights movement. And I actually learned about you in my history class as like one of like the really big influencers of the gay rights, but especially like the asexual movement. So I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh, like I've met David J before, and they're like, oh, that's so cool. So yeah, first just want to say like thanks for like being so influential in that movement. I think like the way that you go about your activism is really powerful. But my question in the chat was just that for me and for most of my friends is that we understand we have a problem. Well, a lot of people understand they have a problem, but they don't have the tools to then go about addressing that problem. And so what do you do then with like your tech addiction, I guess?
It's a really good question and not one that I have an answer to. Maybe not one I have a satisfying answer to. And I think that what I've seen happen is that, because like I'm not where you are in my relationship with these tools, right? What I've seen is that transforming as an individual is really, really hard if it's still where all of your friends are talking and engaging. And the point isn't to get off of technology that's bad. The point is to have a relationship with technology that serves you and serves your relationships, not Facebook's bottom line or TikTok's bottom line or like the other things that they're built to serve. And I think what I've seen happen and what I've seen work in other ways in my life is being able to add intentionality to that relationship, having a way that you and your friends can talk about how something like Snapchat makes you feel, and have conversation, like create a way to talk about relationship with technology and why they're complicated, and then have, and I know that folks like Log Off Movement are working on this. We have some versions of this up on our website in a section called Take Control, which I can link to in chat. The folks behind the Social Dilemma, Exposure Labs, have another version of this. There are different guides that are things that you can try to turn off notifications, to delete some of the apps, to switch from using things like Instagram to just directly texting pictures to one another, so that if you want to communicate with someone, you're not pulling them into an environment that's designed to suck them down a hole. A lot of those things are powerful, but you kind of have to decide to do them together. And so knowing how to have the conversations that let you decide to do things together, I think is a really important step.
Thank you so much.
And I see in chat, Maddie, thank you for linking the site. And I see that there's a great resource there. Yeah, I think that there's some really good resources around about things to try, but the trick is like getting to the point where you and your friends, or at least a friend, can look at that list and be like, okay, what can we try together?
So I see Maddie and Jean have asked, I think, questions in the chat. Do you want to, Maddie, do you want to ask your question? And then Mira, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, I can go.
Okay, so let me just jump to Maddie first, because I already got her thinking of it. Maddie, did you have a question? Maddie Freeman?
It was not really a question, but
okay.
I just wanted to tell Alexa, but also everyone else, that in my blog post I just sent you, Julie, that I think you guys are putting
awesome.
I put a lot of tips at the end that really helped me specifically get off of my phone and beat my addiction, because it's so hard to just sit down and be like, hey, I'm not going to log on social media. Like, you need to have tools at your hands, which I totally hear you. It's almost impossible. It's like, we know we have this problem, but like, we need to do something about it. We need to try to personally change our habits, So I just wanted to let you know that though it might not fix everything, there's some good tips on there that really did help me beat my addiction. So if you want, I put my email in there if you want me to send you it. I just want to let you know. But I actually did also have a question for David, and I just wanted to say thank you for being here, because this is really cool. But I was just wondering specifically on the legislation front. I know just kind of, I've been thinking about the business models of apps like Instagram and just the way that their algorithms are set up. And I know that you're doing a lot of work to try to kind of find legislation to change that. I'm just curious if there's anything, I guess, the public can do, because I know there's such a huge push for making those changes and for having new legislation. But I'm just curious, what's holding back from actually making that change? Like, what's Facebook's, why I don't know. I'm just curious how we could contribute to getting that more on their, I don't know. I'm trying to, yeah, just how we can make it more important for them to face.
Totally. I've got one more thing on the sort of habit change, and then I'd love to answer that question.
Okay.
Which is a principle I just remember that we talk about a lot is finding ways to introduce friction. Within these tech companies, they are doing everything they can to minimize friction, to be like, how do we make it so that your brain has this slippery slope from glancing to see that your phone just buzzed to your second hour scrolling or watching TikTok videos, without you ever having a moment to pause and make a decision. And so create those moments for yourself to pause and make a decision, whether that is through changing notifications, whether that is through engaging with your friends in ways that don't then put you into a feed, whether it's through other kind of mechanisms of control, other things. They really want to train you to sort of just have your thumb move before your brain's been able to think. And if you can create ways to break that cycle, that can be really, really important.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Thank you.
And you were asking about transforming the business model. I know there's a lot of questions, so I want to have it be fast. I'm happy to touch on some of the legislation that is in the works. A lot of it is about young people's mental health, which I think is really, really interesting and powerful. But when I think about the business model, I think about back when I was starting Avon around 2000, everyone was worried that Microsoft was going to own the internet forever, because they own Microsoft Windows, they'd put out Internet Explorer, they own Word. No one could imagine, because Microsoft controlled the software on everyone's computer, everyone just imagined that they were going to run everything forever. And no one could really predict that technology was going to evolve in a way that made that impossible. That like made Microsoft just not matter that much anymore, and made their way of doing business not matter that much anymore. And part of that was because there was an antitrust lawsuit, there was regulation, there was advocacy against Microsoft that sort of meant that they were on the defensive, so they couldn't be at the forefront of innovation anymore. And part of it was just that technology moved on. And I think that when I think about the companies like Facebook or TikTok or YouTube, companies that run on micro-targeted advertisement, I don't think that they're going to give that up as a business model. They're making too much money. Their entire culture, their entire software is too built around it. But if there's pressure on them, then I think they can just take up less space in the world. And they can take up less space in our attention, and that could be a really, really good thing.
Great, thank you so much.
Mira, go ahead. And then Hannah, and then Alma.
Great. Well, first of all, David, thank you so much. It's such a treat to get the chance to talk with you. So thank you. And apologies, my voice is giving out a little bit. So last year. So my question is, so in my mind, there are kind of two things that'll tangibly chip away at this problem. One is these movements that you mentioned that might challenge big tech, for example, like a psychologically sustainable social media. And in that case, the spotlight would kind of shift and people's interest would shift. And the second thing that would chip away is like legislative bodies come in and say, hey, we realize the free market and like consumer tech totally place an incentive on monetizing human attention, but that's like not cool. So we're going to put this law into place, and it becomes, you know, essentially illegal to monetize our conscious spaces. So the issue with the second one is that the government is very slow acting. Like you said, with the cigarette movement too, it took them a very long time to come in and say, like, you can't do that. So I'm wondering what you think of like the interplay of these two, and is it possible to shift the focus to something that is ultimately healthier and better for us overall, which we would know that, but one of them, which is current social media, is using like psychological tendencies that are, you know, deeply biologically ingrained to their advantage. So like, how can I stop using Instagram, stop using all these things and say, oh, this is healthier for me, when, you know, my brain and just the way I'm built is kind of nudging me towards first one, you know?
So I think if I'm hearing your question correctly, I think there is definitely interplay between those two things. That even though regulation moves slowly, regulation doesn't have to be in place for it to start changing things. The second that a bill gets proposed, the policy teams inside of these big orgs know about it. The teams who are working on integrity know, like I talk to a lot of the folks inside of these companies. They're not monoliths. There's intense competition internally about what direction the company's going to head in. And when there's regulation looming, that changes that direction right away, even if the regulation hasn't even been voted on yet. It changes where investors put their money. Suddenly investors who were unwilling to invest in anything that was like Facebook because they were afraid Facebook would just copy and kill it are looking at the antitrust legislation being like, oh, maybe Facebook won't just copy and kill this new thing that's trying to help people connect more deeply and meaningfully. So maybe we can put money into it. So I think that the regulation is an insufficient but really important part of what changes the landscape. And to your point, I think we need to give people better options. Another metaphor I think about, you know, I come from a relational organizing background. So the question that drives me in life is like, how do I put people into relationships that really matter, that are deep, that'll allow us to have a richer connection to ourselves and to the world around us? And that is just not the problem that social media is out to solve. It's out to get our attention. And if you build software that, if you build software tools, and I think they need to be integrated with social tools, like, but if you build technology that is about that kind of deep connection, then I think you're offering something fundamentally different, and you're offering something that makes social media a little bit less addictive. One of the podcasts that we have talks about how the opposite of addiction is connection, that they found that in studies with drugs, when people, they did it first with rats, and then I think that there's some studies with people, some examples with people too, where when people have a thriving social environment, other forms of dopamine and oxytocin just become less appealing. And I think that we'll see the same thing with technology, where right now it does the opposite. It sort of erodes our social environment, which makes us more dependent on it.
That's a great observation. Hannah, would you like to go? And then I'm going to read Jean's question because he has unstable tech internet. But Hannah, why don't you go ahead next?
I just wanted to thank you so much as well. It's really great hearing you speak. I was wondering, because I feel like, especially in regards to self-care around technology usage, like I've seen this conversation, I guess, in kind of two different lenses, because I feel like we could either talk about it in a way where maybe we really can't get off these apps because we're scrolling too much. But I feel like there's also that lens of the digital divide, in a sense where, like, I know some people that can't get access to technology in the first place. And obviously, if you don't have access to technology in the first place, you probably don't have the resources to understand what the implications of utilizing certain platforms and, softwares can have. And so I feel like when we're talking about self-care, it could like be privileged in the conversation. So my question is, how do we tackle the digital divide with like the physical technology, and then also the conversation of like maybe like someone like me who has access to technology and is in a different kind of position of, I guess, discomfort in like how we're using technology, I guess, if that makes sense. And then in a pandemic, if we're creating these like kind of support groups, like, I guess, what would that tangibly look like, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I want to, it brings to mind a story about when we close the digital divide, how are we closing it? And what agency are we offering to people? Like, if we're closing the digital divide, that should be about, or that can be about, offering people agency over information, agency, economic agency, ways to understand themselves, and technology. Technology is a really powerful tool to do that. I'm not advocating that we get rid of it, but I think that we need to have an image of what that agency comes from, and we need to have an understanding and kind of governance and accountability to the people who for whom that divide is being closed, in order to avoid it becoming another form of colonialism. So I think about Facebook's move into Africa, where Facebook said, we are going to underwrite all of the cell phone data for Facebook. So if people can get phones, and we're going to help to underwrite phones. So people are getting phones and they're getting access to the internet for the first time, but unless they have money, the internet they can access is Facebook. So Facebook is taking all of its tools, all of its algorithms, which were all built for a radically different culture and a radically different set of people on a radically different set of assumptions. And they're just shipping them into Kenya. And what happens is a bunch of discussion explodes. A lot of it explodes in languages that their moderators don't speak. A lot of it winds up being widespread information in places like Ethiopia. It winds up contributing to violence. And you have people who are connected, and there's genuine benefits of that connection, but there's also real implications of that connection that the people who are building it, the people who are building it and bankrolling it, aren't incentivized to address. And that's not to say we shouldn't be closing the digital divide, but I think we need to be understanding how to close it in a way that is accountable.
I actually think this is a perfect time to turn to Jean in Cote d'Ivoire, who has from Africa, or I think he was in Cote d'Ivoire. That's the same. Yes, Cote d'Ivoire. Yeah, sorry, Ivory Coast. And ask his question. And so he asked me to share this with you. So, do you think that people are sufficiently educated about technology to realize how harmful it is becoming? Personally speaking, from a personal experience in Ivory Coast, which is in West Africa, it's experiencing a rapid digitalization these years with more social media users. So it kind of builds on what you were just talking about, David.
Well, and Jean, I'm really curious for you have the direct knowledge here that I don't. So I'd be really curious for your thoughts, Ken. I'd be really curious for your thoughts on this as well. I think that what I see in our circles, which are in the US, which are not not the voices I necessarily trust the most, is that there needs to be an intense slowing down, and there needs to be a focus on building relationships with people who are being impacted first and deploying technology second. I think it is in companies like Facebook and Uber, who have a culture of moving as quickly as possible. That slowing down is something that they do not want to do, but they're beginning to understand the consequences of not doing it. And I'm beginning to see more of an appetite for it internally. And I'm definitely beginning to see a lot more people kind of loudly calling for it in the ecosystem out here. But, out here is not the most important source of knowledge to what you're talking about. So I'm really curious for your thoughts on this as well. Be open to sharing.
Jean, can you unmute? Is your internet okay enough for you at least to unmute and chat?
If not, then.
There he comes. Here he is. Yeah.
Okay. So I will try. I don't know if you will get me. Sorry, my network is kind of unstable.
Yeah.
So basically, Naricos last year I tried to raise some awareness about technology and say guys, you're spending time on your phone, asking questions. For example, can you have your dinner or your lunch without your phone? And almost 9 people out of 10 were saying no, I can't, because they're saying they are working, they need that, even though they don't have to do anything on social media, they have to have the phone so that they can maybe see some feed and stuff like that. So it's most of the people know that they're getting addicted to it, but actually they don't know how it's impacting their life. Even though you raise the question, they'll be like, oh, I'm not addicted, I'm just just on it. But they can spend even 30 seconds without a phone actually. Even when they're sleeping, they don't turn off the data. It's still on. So this is something. And the second thing is most of the people are oh, I'm using it to work, and but when you get home, you have a family. Even when you have hang out with friends, they will still have their phone. Something is very funny here. People will first take pictures of the food before even eating the food. If you invite them, they will just snap it first, take the picture, and then they will eat it. For me, kind of showing that technology is taking over humanity. And actually, there's a lot of small companies that are digital, working digital and stuff like that. And we are going through a kind of process where most of the companies are turning on to digital. So I think that if we teach people on the real purpose of technology, that is facilitating human activity, we can definitely help them in making the right choice. Because when they say in Africa, people just found themselves in technology. They were not ready for this explosion that we have these days, where everybody can easily get access to WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, easily. And internet is getting very cheaper, so they can do anything. So I think that if we have content where people know, okay, this is how it's getting, and this is how you should go about it. You should not use technology just because everybody uses it, but you should use it because you have a purpose to achieve. And this purpose should be a benefit for your community instead of thinking only benefit. Something like that. I don't know if I made myself a little bit clear about my question.
I think that the question you're asking, the guiding question you're asking, is a really, really good one, which is if I'm going to let this thing into my life, this thing that I know has really deep control, the ability to sort of suck me in, like what's it adding? What's it adding to my relationships? What's it adding to my relationship with my community? And how do I only let it in a way that serves that, and not let it in the way that it wants to get in? Like that's what I hear you trying to articulate, and I hear people as people struggling with in what you're saying. And I really appreciate you sharing what you're seeing, which I think is, it's really worrying if this is all being adopted and not being questioned.
Alma had to, no, Alma, are you still there? Jean, thank you very much for that question. And actually, as somebody who's worked in Africa for many years, I want to follow up with you and learn more. But is Alma still there?
Can you hear
me?
me?
I didn't see your little blue hand. Sorry, there, go ahead. But your beautiful pink back wall there, but go ahead, Alma.
Okay, well, hi, David. Thank you so much again. I honestly, I'm just so moved by your story and your involvement, especially in the activist community for so long. It's really great to hear as part of Team Assemble, we're trying to, build a new social media platform specifically for social organizing and activism. And so it's really incredible to hear your perspective. But I was really curious about something you mentioned about just that paradigm shift in how people relate to each other online, and that there were a lot of these assumptions that were made by the founders of these companies that translated into really grave implications for the world, but they didn't see them coming. And also as Stanford students, a lot of these people came from Stanford, thought that they were going to be changing the world for the better and creating a solely positive impact. And I think a really big concern for us is how are we going to know what assumptions we're making that are incorrect? How are we, obviously we're going to be learning from past people's mistakes, but I think the question is kind of twofold. How do we ensure that we're not making those assumptions that could lead to such horrific implications, especially if we get a huge user base? And what were the assumptions that were made that have been proven wrong? So yeah, that's my twofold question.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is recommend a book.
Okay, good, perfect.
Which is Design Justice, which I think provides a much deeper, our course is going to get into this too, but this is, I think, a much deeper answer to that question of how do you know? And I think that if I can summarize some of the ideas I found most powerful in here, it's that one of the assumptions that I think is fundamental and broken is that if something works for a few people, if it works really well for a few people who you know, and everyone else engages with it, then you can just assume that it's working for everyone else. That on a fundamental level, engagement means working. Mm-hmm. And so you had platforms that were kind of when it was just getting used by someone and their friends, they understood all the granularities of the experience and how it was complicated, and they could match to it. And then as soon as it got bigger than that, they lost that view, but they thought they still had it. And so when these problems first started coming up, they were like, no, that's impossible. Of course, there's not harassment happening on a platform, because the image I have of the experience that goes on doesn't involve harassment. It doesn't involve conspiracy theories. It doesn't involve this stuff, right? And so I think recognizing that when you grow and when you scale, you are moving into territory you don't understand. You're moving into communities you don't understand. And approaching that with curiosity rather than confidence. And that also changes how you scale, right? And it changes how you raise money, because if you raise something like VC capital, they're going to be like, great, how do we take this user base of 1,000 and make it 1 million in 2 years or less than 2 years? And if you're operating at that pace, it's really difficult to do that learning. So that may affect how you can raise money. It may affect what kind of team you can build. It affects a lot of things. But I think it ultimately can lead to a much more powerful product. And really critical in that is kind of understanding and naming what you and your team have personally experienced that you bring to the work and what you haven't, right? Like the people who built these platforms had largely not experienced sexual harassment. They didn't come from communities that have been targeted by hate groups historically. So they were much less aware of those things as threats. And having a map of kind of what's some of the knowledge and background that you bring, and what are some of the stuff that you don't have experience with, but that's out there in the world, I think can be really critical. I don't know if that answered your full question.
No,
but.
no, it really did. I actually have a follow-up question. I don't know if we have time for it though.
Let me just check with David. I don't know how much, do you have 5 minutes to go over, or do you have another call
Let me check really quickly. I think I've got a little more time. Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
yeah, I would have like a million more questions, but I think another big thing that I've kind of noticed throughout this conversation has just been like focusing on the individual actions. Like, what can you do to break out of your social media addiction? Like, how can you insert intention into your social media routine and like all these things? But like Mira brought up, like these platforms are designed to addict us. Like they're designed to mess us up in the head. And so I think like a really big thing that we're trying to do is just like create a better option, right? Like create something that doesn't have the intention to addict people or to polarize the world or to, you know, encourage violence and extremism. And I think like your experience with like activism and like creating these huge social movements is really relevant to this. So like, I guess, how do you change the precedent of like what platform people are using, and like how do you make people excited to, you know, make that big change in their life?
So this isn't going to be fully articulate because I'm still figuring out how to articulate this, but one of my instincts is like, don't focus on the actions that people are taking, focus on getting people present with one another. If you can create that moment, like I was telling you about, like that table after, you know, the table in the student center after the talk, like that's where everything happens, when people are sitting down together who really need to be sitting down together, and they know what to be talking about. And so it's one thing to like have an action and get 100 people to click on it and like feel like you're changing behavior in the way that you want to change behavior. But I think it's much more powerful to create those spaces where people are there together. And they often happen at a human scale. Like they're often small, they're often facilitated, they're often but not always synchronous. They're often, there's often sort of a reason why the people at the table can trust one another. There's often a thing for them to talk about that's emotionally powerful that they don't have other places to talk about. But like when you can create those conditions, that's like, it doesn't create the actions you want to create, it creates things that you didn't expect that are really powerful, that are aligned with your values. And if you know how to do that, then that's really where movements come from.
Like it comes from like building trust. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
David, thank you so much. That was brilliant. I'm sure, you know, guys, too, if you want to type more questions into the chat, I'll leave it open and we can maybe get those to David. David, I want to give you guys a shameless opportunity to plug your course. I'm curious, when does it start? How much is it? And who's it open to? The Fundamentals of Humane Technology, is that the course you're talking about?
So there's two links I'd love to put in chat.
Okay.
The first is the course that you just mentioned. I may even sneak a third. Foundations of Humane Technology. This is a free online course that we're hoping to release in the next few months. We're still going back and forth with the viewers to finalize it. But it moves through the definition of humane technology and talks about how to build it, and also kind of surveys the space of people who are talking about this. It's really aimed for people who are kind of building technology in the field, which a lot of you are. And so I think it could be a interesting fit, and it's going to be a deep dive. The other thing that may be a helpful resource that we put together is this campaign called My Social Truth. And it's a story banking campaign. We've asked people around the world, people between the ages of 13 and 25, to submit stories about their relationships with social media and their relationships getting off of social media. And it exists so that because we found that one really powerful kind of conversation is when you start to read stories about people's experience with social media, it kind of like primes the pump and it gives people permission to tell their own stories. And if we can create places where people have permission to tell their own stories, that's one of those places of deep presence that builds power. And so this is a tool for doing that. I recommend checking it out. If these kinds of stories can be tools in the work that you all are doing, I recommend that you use them that way. And if you all have stories that you feel inspired to share, that would be amazing as well. And then the last thing that might be a helpful resource is this. It's the Ledger of Harms. This is our archive of academic research that talks about the harms that social media is creating in the world. And if you all are want to make arguments sort of about your products and how they're better, or you want to understand some of the details, this is a really good resource. And then, sorry, last thing, and then I'll let you all go, is I really want to plug our podcast, Your Undivided Attention. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, it's a really in-depth overview with a lot of the leading experts in the field on the impact that social media is having and the ways that we can move in a new direction.
Well, David, we are all so grateful for you and for all the work that you and the center are doing to lead this movement. And we're so thrilled to be partners with you on it. And it's amazing. And together, perhaps we will all create a healthier, more humane digital world that we're living in, and all your little brothers and sisters and cousins and future cousins to come, and future children to come and grandchildren. We're all in this together. So thank you. And round of applause and snaps or chaps or fun reactions at the bottom for David. But this is great. And thanks, David. I appreciate it. And thanks, guys. We'll be back in touch with the next speaker.
Thank you. This was really fun.